A lot of stimulus to talk about today in today's fourth stimulus check update. New state programs giving out as much as $2,000 in new stimulus checks. President Biden plans for the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill and his $1.75 trillion Build Back Better agenda. Is Joe Manchin going to delay it until 2022? Let's find out. Also, Psaki's back doing press briefings, and she just dropped some major tea on stimulus. You're going to want to stay tuned to find out the details on this one. Serving stimulus hot and fresh to you guys 24/7. This is Ron. Just want to say welcome to the channel. And if you want the latest, most accurate stimulus updates, not to mention the best money-making news on the U.S. economy, inflation, U.S. stock market, and cryptocurrency, then you're in the right place. Just hit the subscribe button real quick, tap the notification bell, join the family, and let's go and jump in. $2,000 checks. That's what the state Senate just passed in Massachusetts. Up to $2,000 stimulus checks going to essential employees who showed up for work in person during the virus pandemic. Wow. I gotta say, guys, that's some pretty good news. Now, it says here, the Senate unanimously approved a $3.82 billion package that aims to spend billions of dollars in federal stimulus or federal dollars from the American Rescue Plan Act. Stimulus that they're planning on, $500 million for the state's unemployment trust fund, and another $500 million for bonuses. Governor Charlie Baker also said in late October that he's generally supportive of, quote, premium pay programs, saying that this is something that is the right thing to do. Now, if you guys are curious about who's getting this, as long as you worked in person during the state of emergency that began March 10th, 2020, and lasted for more than a year, you should be eligible. On top of that, household incomes must not be more than 300% of the federal poverty level. Baker's administration, as well as the advisory panel, would determine who exactly qualifies as a, quote, essential worker. The legislation suggests that those eligible may include, but not be limited to, healthcare workers, long-term care workers, public health staff, child care workers, educators, school staff, farm workers, food production workers, grocery store and other service workers, transportation workers, utility workers, and foster care parents. Overall, pretty standard rules for stimulus checks. So if you know somebody in Massachusetts, definitely send them a message and share this video to let them know. But yeah, like I've been saying, guys, states are finally kicking into gear with all the money that they got from the March stimulus check package. Now, if you guys have been watching our updates, Massachusetts is just one of those states. Here's another one from the state of Maine. They started this month already. $300 checks to single filers who make less than $75,000 a year, or joint filers who make less than $150,000 a year. Now, according to this, your state tax would be used to determine who qualifies for the payment. One of your state senators explained, quote, "We really need to be focusing on those that continue to show up during the pandemic, that continue to go to work, that continue to risk their lives, those essential workers, to give them something over and beyond what was provided to them at the federal level." Now, if you guys recall, the U.S. Treasury released guidelines earlier this year allowing for up to $25,000 in hazard pay for grocery store workers, as well as other essential workers. Now, I think this is a big part of where all this state level stimulus is coming from. They pointed out that 25% of essential workers were estimated to have low income within their household, with 13% in high risk households. They even defined essential work as, quote, work involving regular in-person interactions or regular physical handling of items that were also handled by others. So that counts out teleworkers. They're including a lot of industries here like healthcare, public health, safety, childcare, education, sanitation, transportation, and food production and services. Special priority goes to lower income essential workers and lists some examples including nursing home staff and home care workers, workers at farms, food production facilities, grocery stores and restaurants, truck drivers, transit staff, warehouse workers, and childcare workers. Now, there's also state stimulus checks like the Golden State Stimulus in California. They just released nearly 800,000 of those stimulus checks last week. Some of those stimulus checks were going out as high as $1,100 in stimulus checks. Wow. Yep, pretty sure that we're not going to be seeing the last of those essential stimulus check payments for essential workers. I would expect many more states to be dropping news like this in the near future. Do you think that your state could be next on the list soon? Drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're thinking. Now, as for Biden's stimulus plans, we've also got the latest news for you guys. Now, apparently Biden's planning a big signing ceremony for the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure package. One source said that the officials are considering doing the event on the White House South Lawn. Now, that's usually where the presidential helicopter lands, so there'll be enough space to accommodate a large crowd. The White House also confirmed that Biden will be joined by lawmakers who helped write the legislation and, quote, a diverse group of leaders who fought for its passage across the country, ranging from governors and mayors of both parties to labor union and business leaders. Now, in case you were wondering, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell, he's not joining. He said in an interview that he has, quote, other things that he's got to do, but he did express his Republican support for the bill. This bill was basically written in the Senate by a bipartisan group of Republicans and Democrats. All the House did last week was simply take up the Senate bill and pass it. This bill was crafted in the Senate. 19 Republicans voted for it. I was one of them. I think it was good for the country, and I'm glad it passed. Big week up ahead. Now, aside from the BIF bill signing, we're also going to see the House vote for the $1.75 trillion social stimulus bill that'll give us all sorts of stimulus goodies like paid leave, Medicare expansion, first-time homebuyer credits, rental assistance, the works. Democratic leaders are committed to revisiting the Build Back Better Act before the Thanksgiving break. Now, actually, it was really just the House centrists delaying the vote, saying that they needed to see the numbers from the Congressional Budget Office. Now, we got some of those numbers last week, but the CBO warned that a full score will take longer. Good news for us? The signed commitment from the centrists only said that they needed, quote, fiscal information before they vote on the bill, not necessarily a full score. That leaves room for them to support final passage of this deadline, regardless of the CBO's timeline. Representative Ilhan Omar seems cautiously optimistic about the whole deal. She said, quote, let's hope they don't move the goalpost, break the pledge, and actually help us pass the Build Back Better bill. They wanted the win of decoupling the bills, and now we will see if they want the win for the American people. But here's what I think. I think betting the House vote is really going to be the easier pass. What we really need to watch out for is the uphill battle in the Senate, which infamous Senate holdouts Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema feel like they're just waiting to kind of knock the bill down. Manchin already mentioned possibly holding in this until 2022. We got some major insider information saying that U.S. Senator Joe Manchin may delay President Biden's Build Back Better legislation until next year over inflation worries. Now, we have seen Manchin sounding the alarm on inflation lately, and his recent tweet on the latest inflation report, by all accounts, the threat posed by record inflation to the American people is not transitory and is instead getting worse. From the grocery store to the gas pump, Americans know how inflation tax is real, and DC can no longer ignore these economic pains that Americans are facing every day now. It doesn't quite mention the Build Back Better here, but he said it before. Quote, throughout the last 3 months, I've been straightforward about my concerns that I will not support a reconciliation package that expands social programs and irresponsibly adds to our nearly $29 trillion in national debt that no one else seems to care about. Nor will I support a package that risks hurting American families during this historic inflation. Quick to answer this is White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, fresh back from the pandemic. Here she says in the latest White House press briefing.
So 1 in 4 Americans, according to a new survey, have experienced some kind of loss of income as a result of higher prices. The president has expressed concern about this. I know that you were working on different fronts to address this, but I mean, how urgent is it, and how, is there any sort of specific concern that this is going to affect not just political outcomes, but just the overall economy?
Sure. Well, Andrea, first let me say that, a lot of the talk about inflation, I'm not saying from you, but in general out there, has been, it's become a political cudgel, and it shouldn't be. It's impacting, as you said, millions of Americans, no matter their political party, and that's certainly of concern to the president. I would note that everyone from the Federal Reserve to Wall Street agree with our assessment that inflation is already expected to be substantially decelerate next year. I know you're not talking about that, but that's an important component here. And economists across the board also agree that the president's economic agenda, the bipartisan infrastructure bill that he will sign on Monday, and the Build Back Better bill that we are working to move forward will not add to inflationary pressure and will ease inflationary pressure over the long term. But when we move past the economic jargon, which I realize is what you're asking me, and talk about the real impacts on people's lives, we're really talking about cost to people, right? And you talked about this on Wednesday. So it's cost of childcare, cost of housing, cost of gas, cost of household goods. That's how people are experiencing this on a day-to-day basis. And that is, of course, of concern to the president. Our view is that the real risk here is inaction. And the reason I wanted to do this slide today, I love slides and graphics on my first day back, because we had to have one, but is because if we don't act on Build Back Better, what we're doing is we won't be able to cut childcare costs in 2020. We know that is a huge impact on people's daily lives and American families. We won't be able to make preschool free for many families starting in 2022, saving many families $8,600. We won't be able to get ahead of skyrocketing housing costs. I mean, that's a part of this bill too. Has a major investment in building new housing, affordable housing units, so that people can move into them and live in them and address the pending housing crisis. And we won't be able to save Americans thousands of dollars by negotiating prescription drug prices. So our view is this makes a strong case. This is a strong case for moving forward with this agenda, because what we're really talking about is cost to American families, how it's impacting them, and that's something that if we don't act now, we won't be able to address these things in the short term either.
Quote, if we don't act now, we won't be able to address these things in the short term either. I wish she was saying that about more stimulus checks, right, guys? Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer doubled down on his Build Back Better anti-inflationary argument and how the bill is going to actually help with the supply chain crisis that we're feeling right now. Quote, the best way to address inflation is to pass a bill that creates jobs, reduces bottlenecks, and is totally paid for by making sure the wealthy pay their fair share. That's just what we're doing with the Build Back Better Act. The press also asked Psaki about Manchin specifically and whether or not we're going to see his support on this finally. Here's what she said.
And then, last one, Senator Manchin was critical of sort of inflation this week. Obviously, there's a question of if it'll impact his vote on the Build Back Better issue, and I'm wondering if you've received any assurances from him that it will not. But also, it plays into sort of larger critique that he's had about the Fed having at some point ramped down. He wishes that they had ramped down bond buying and quantitative easing. So I'm wondering if that is a criticism that the White House agrees with, especially as the president's sort of evaluating this petition.
I'm just not going to get into critiquing the Federal Reserve from here or their decisions, given they make independent decisions. I would note that, and I'll let Senator Manchin, of course, speak for himself and his support or concerns he may have. What we're focused on is getting this bill passed through the House next week, and we have every intention of working with leadership to get that done. And we will remain at a senior staff level at this point, engaged closely with Senator Manchin, answer any questions he has. I will note that the vast majority of outside economists agree that this is not a bill that will add to inflationary pressure. And in fact, over the longer term, it will ease inflationary pressure. And I would note just a couple of people who at times haven't always been positive about our proposals. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers said about Build Back Better, I don't think that's an inflation problem. He said if he was in Congress, he would vote for it. Moody's Analytics Chief Economist Mark Zandi, I don't think the Build Back Better agenda will be inflationary. I think it's designed to lift long-term economic growth by improving productivity. That's public infrastructure, roads, bridges, broadband. That will make us more productive. That should ease inflation. As we know, increased economic productivity and growth eases inflationary pressure. And of course, our favorite, the 17 winners of the Nobel Prize in Economics, who wrote that because this agenda invests in long-term economic capacity and will enhance the ability of more Americans to participate, it will ease longer-term inflationary pressure. I would also note, and then I will keep cooking around here, but that one of the reasons they don't have concerns, as they've said in many of these interviews that I was just pulling out components of, is because it's fully paid for. And the reason it's fully paid for is because we're asking corporations, the wealthiest Americans, to pay more in taxes. That is something. You don't need to be kind of a sleuth here to understand why some Republicans are speaking out against this package. Is it because they're opposed to lowering childcare costs? Is it because they're opposed to making sure that preschool is available for families? Is it because they're opposed to lowering healthcare costs? No, it's because they don't want to raise taxes on corporations. We all know that. Hope people ask them those questions.
Whoa. Shots fired right there, right, guys? Yeah, I hope people will ask Republicans these questions about why they're so against raising taxes on corporations. Really makes you think, right? Progressive Caucus Chair Pramila Jayapal jumped in with her own support, saying there are several aspects of the spending bill that would help cut costs for Americans, such as provisions on limiting childcare costs, providing universal pre-K, and lowering the price of prescription drugs. Here's a clip.
And Congresswoman, let me start there. Joe Manchin's referring to this current inflation issue as an inflation tax. What do you see and what do you tell your constituents? Because on one hand, wages are up, and on the other hand, cost of living is up.
Well, Chuck, that's exactly right. I mean, that is what we're hearing from my constituents. They're not talking about inflation, by the way. They're talking about, hey, I don't have enough money in my budget to pay for the things I need to pay for. And the reason I say it that way is because it's really important to understand that if you're on a fixed budget, as many people are, as I have been in my life, then what you're always trying to do is balance what you have to spend with what you have in that budget. The way that we can fix that immediately while the supply chain issues are being worked out, while the economy recovers from COVID and the worst economic downturn we've seen in recent history, is we can actually help families cut their costs. How do we do that? We passed the Build Back Better Act. We cut childcare costs in half by assuring that no family is going to pay more than 7%. We ensure that pre-K is provided for 3- and 4-year-olds. We cut the cost of pharmaceutical drugs so that people can actually pay less for their health care. Those are the things that are going to immediately affect people's pocketbooks. And that is why it is so important to pass the Build Back Better Act, which I think is actually going to help people survive through this time of recovery. Let's be clear. It is going to take time to recover. We knew that. We have made tremendous progress on COVID, but my families are telling me, look, I still don't have childcare. My kids are just starting to get vaccinated and go back to school. That's the uncertainty that families are living with, and we have to respond by cutting their costs, which is exactly what we do in Build Back Better.
So it looks like they're all saying pretty much the same thing. It's about time we pass this thing and get on with the next stimulus for 2022. But what do you guys think? Yeah, we're watching out for that one. Remember, Biden said, quote, maybe more on stimulus next year. Same with other Democrats aiming for another follow-up stimulus package after this one. You guys have got to tune in again for our future upcoming updates and one with all the other hot stimulus programs coming out this year and even later next year. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on the channel and hit that notification bell. It's right there so you don't miss out. And if you're feeling a little bit more generous, there's also that join button for our channel membership. A lot of perks in there if you join as an official Ron Yates channel member. I cannot thank you guys enough for the support. Really, it helps out the channel big time. More stimulus updates coming to you soon. I really hope that you guys caught all of the stimulus in today's update. More state programs giving out as much as $2,000 in stimulus checks. Biden's plans for the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill, and his $1.75 trillion Build Back Better agenda. Manchin planning to delay until 2022, and Jen Psaki dropping the T on stimulus. Definitely a jam-packed update for you guys, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. I just want to thank you guys so much for always watching and hitting the like button. I appreciate the support. I will see you guys again in the next one. Take care and be safe.